الدنيا تضيق خلقك، الحمد لله ما حد بياخذ منك رزقك. هدي وارتاح ثابر واطمح من حقك، بس بلاش العين. لا 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 ما تسوى الدنيا تضيق خلقك، الحمد لله ما حد بياخذ منك رزقك. هدي وارتاح ثابر واطمح من حقك، بس بلاش العين.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our very prestigious awards for this evening. It's the third time we are doing this, but before we get to the actual awards, we are going to call on somebody to welcome you officially, and that will be our President and our Secretary General of the CBE. Let's call our President first, and that is J. Pema. Nice round of applause for him, please.
Thank you, Fakir. Good evening, honorable ministers, ambassadors, excellencies, award nominees, distinguished guests, members of the CBE and friends. Tonight, at least this weekend, has been a very busy weekend. So lots of people that are at the Veterans can't be here. And if you're not at the Veterans function, then you should be here. And so we're pleased to see lots of dignitaries, high-profile people here, and we thank you for your attendance. On behalf of the CBE board and the organizing committee, a very warm welcome to all of you to this third annual CBE Awards dinner. I thank you all for taking the time to spend this evening with us. Many of you will recall that these awards were inaugurated 3 years ago at the Birchwood Hotel, where we enjoyed the distinguished honor of being addressed by our iconic struggle hero, Amit Kathrada. As part of the continuation of recognizing and paying tribute to individuals who have made tremendous personal sacrifices for a better society, the CBE found it befitting to name this year's awards the Amit Kathrada Excellence in Leadership Awards. We pay tribute to Uncle Kathy's lifelong contribution to building a non-racial and just society in South Africa. This year, we also celebrate the achievements of young innovators who have made a significant impact on the areas of focus. This evening's awards were also inspired by Advocate Thuli Madonsela's book, No Longer Whispering to Power. You will agree when you see the list of awardees, these are people that have really spoken out to ensure that our democracy is not interfered with, that we have a value system that will serve the youth of tomorrow. They've really put their lives at risk, their work at risk, or their jobs at risk, and we're really thankful to them. In the book, Thuli makes reference of the poem Invictus, which was also a favorite of Nelson Mandela. The word Invictus means unconquerable. Okay, so in quoting from the poem, we thank whatever gods may be for the unconquerable spirit of our awardees. They are truly serving our country well. We pay tribute to the life, and we also pay tribute this evening to the life and spirit of Amit Timol during this storytelling session. So we have a really full evening. I think everyone will enjoy this evening, and I really want you to relax, be comfortable, and take away a lot from this evening. It is, however, disappointing that after more than 20 years into our democracy, the gap between rich and poor is widening by the day. Unemployment is on the rise, and millions of families are faced with socio-economic challenges. As a business organization concerned with the status quo, the CBE is delighted that Mr. Bonang Mohale accepted our invitation to provide some perspective to stimulate further reflection on this and the role that business can play to promote justice and stability in a democratic society. While corporate South Africa are playing a significant role trying to hold government to account, there is still a lot of work that has to be done in contributing to broad-based equity in our society. Against this background, I trust you are all comfortable and will have an enjoyable evening celebrating our super awardees, and we'll have a lot to reflect on after the function. Thank you. I now hand over to Fakir and Yusuf. Thank you.
I just want to remind you, Fakir, I'm not the one that insisted on that. I think Rashid, no, Anis Lunat was the one, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. They say that those that don't study history are doomed to repeat it. Yet those who do study history are doomed to stand by helplessly while everyone else repeats it. And as Machiavelli said, that whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past. For human events ever resemble those of preceding times. This arises from the fact that they are produced by men who ever have been and ever shall be, animated by the same passions, and thus they necessarily have the same results. Which version of history are we preparing for future generations? The euphoria that we as a country experienced 23 years ago is replaced by despair. Who would have believed that 23 years later we would be wrestling for the soul of our democracy? There is a serious call for civil society and business to unite and play the role that some in our generation and those before us played in resistance politics. Some may argue as to whether a mass democratic movement can be sustainable, especially in the current context of our economic upheaval. The depths of poverty continues amongst the poor in our society. Even amongst the middle class, education is poor in public schools and too expensive in private schools. Public hospitals is not adequate, private hospitals at a cost. The added burden of extra security at home, these are all costs. They would further argue that people are struggling to survive, let alone resistant politics. It is indeed very, very unfortunate. We do have a choice in that we can either watch our country burn or we can be counted amongst those that stood up and speak truth to power. A mass democratic movement is indeed needed now as much as it was needed pre-1994. We owe it to our grandchildren to alter the course of history. Remember, we did not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. Oliver Tambo said, South Africa must be held by the people of South Africa as a whole, not by a white minority and not even by a black majority, but by the majority of the people of South Africa as a whole. Such a government will be legitimate. It will derive its mandate and authority from the people. It is an honor and privilege that tonight we will be joined by men and women who spoke truth to power. It is also an honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for the evening, the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, Mr. Bonang Mohali, whose CV speaks volumes and has an incredible, illustrious career. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bonang Mohali.
There are 10 recipients of this award tonight. And they are really deserving in terms of what we have heard from the previous speakers for the achievement they have done in service of this country in leadership. The first of them tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is Kes Kuvadia.
Thank you very much. This is absolutely humbling. There are people who are unsung and who are unknown, who have made tremendous sacrifices for not the country we have at the moment, but the country we will hopefully have in the not too distant future. So thank you very much to CBE, and I am absolutely humbled given the people who are receiving awards today and to find myself amongst them. I noticed 3 people earlier this evening, and I'm going to identify them to make a point about leadership and about where our country is. The one is Pravin. He's somewhere at the back there. The other is Derek Hanekom, and the other is Makosi Koza. And I'm identifying these individuals because our president, in his wisdom, decided that these individuals don't have a very good role to play in government. And he essentially fired them from what they were doing. At the same time, he retained people like Batabile Dlamini and Faith Mutambi and others. And I've had the, I guess, distinct challenge of working with at least one of those ladies in the last couple of weeks on the social grants issue. And I'm convinced that the social grants issue is not working because people just don't care what happens to the poorest of the poor in this country. Now, the three individuals I mentioned cared immensely about what happens to the poorest of the poor in this country. And they were fired while others were retained. So what does that tell us about our president? To me, it says that our president is not too interested in the national interest and in improving the lives of the majority of our people. And that's where we find ourselves. So to me, the awards tonight and the challenge it poses to us. When I was interviewed earlier, I was asked, what keeps you going? What keeps the drive going? And my response was that, well, it's the circumstances we find ourselves in. The circumstances we find ourselves in, not find ourselves in. Bonang said, these are our own goals. We are responsible for those circumstances. But those circumstances make it incumbent not just upon those of us receiving awards tonight, not just upon those of us who were involved in the struggle and still are, but to all South Africans to actually put their shoulders to the wheel and ensure that our country is governed by leadership that actually cares about the poorest of the poor in our country. Because if we do not address the plight of the poorest of the poor, if we do not address the plight of the unemployed, and if we don't address inequality in this country, we are actually letting down the comrade in whose name tonight is, and that's Ahmed Kathrada, who, in one of the last things he did before he left us, asked Jacob Zuma to step down. And we, as South Africans and as concerned South Africans who are concerned about the national interest, if we want to show leadership, we must be at the forefront of talking truth to a leadership that is actually letting us down, and we must do whatever we can do to ensure that our country has a leadership that governs our country in a way that we can put all of the immense resources and capacity we have in our country to building this country to the good of all of us in this country. So thank you very much for those few words. I'm really humbled.
لا 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 ما تسوى الدنيا تضيق خلقك الحمد لله تافل وضح من حقك بس
And we'd like to call on former Minister Derek Hanekom.
So what I have in my hand is called a stopwatch. That will tell me when my 3 minutes are over, but it's only starting now. Thank you so much. It's a huge honor, a huge privilege, and quite a humbling thing to be given this award. But I must say, when I see Mavuso Msimang here, and I see Tuli Madonsela and Ibrahim, and Mohammed Timol, and so many others, and I feel, gee, this is not for me. You must have made a mistake somewhere along the lines. You know, standing here with greatness, Praveen Gordhan, in my various capacities as minister of different things, I have handed out hundreds of awards, science and technology awards, tourism awards, I haven't often received an award, so I don't know quite how to deal with it. I was hoping I'd be a little bit later in the line so that I see how other people deal with it. But truly, it is a massive honor. I want to add to the words that Cass used here, saying, look, when we receive these rewards, it's partly because we have slightly higher profiles than other people. There are hundreds and thousands of people doing amazing things in our country. So I want to pay a little tribute to the many, many public servants, quiet, unsung heroes who are getting on with their jobs, who are honest and hardworking and diligent. Secondly, I want to pay a tribute to you here in the audience, business people who do not accept bribes, who do not pay bribes, who get on with their job honestly, creating jobs and improving the welfare of many, many people. Give yourselves a quick round of applause, because you matter. You matter. Things can go horribly wrong. Sorry, I should have said to be in the presence of somebody like Zak Yacoub is another big honor for me, I must say. Honestly. But I have 1 minute and 10 seconds left. And I just have to say that, you know, as this kind of award is for us a really wonderful acknowledgement of the little bit that we were able to do to make a difference. But the hundreds and thousands of South Africans will ensure that whatever bad there is up there, it is not going to consume us, it is not going to destroy us. We will stand up, we will fight, and in receiving this little award, I just make one pledge to you that we will continue the fight. We will make sure that the struggles of the Nelson Mandelas and the Oliver Tambos and the many, many other good people, that their struggles will not have been in vain. We will continue the fight. Thank you very much.
And our next awardee, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Makosi Khoza.
Thank you very much. I'm truly humbled by this gesture, and as said earlier by other awardees, this is really not about us, but it's really about the task that lies ahead. In the absence of truth, silence is a lie. And we dare forget that there are so many men and women who paid the ultimate price for this country. And we live in such a beautiful country. And I hope that all of us here and all South Africans are not going to give up. This is our country. We have over 56% of young people who are unemployed. They are really looking at us, and they still want us to push. And let's push until we get where we have to be as a country. Thank you very much.
And now, with our three people on stage who will be making the awards, we'd like to call on Praveen Gordhan.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Namaskar. Dumelang Sanbonani. On behalf of my colleague and comrade, WC Jonas, and myself, thank you very much to the CBE for this extraordinary honor that you bestow upon us. Like all my fellow awardees have said, and let me congratulate all of them for their contributions in various ways to our young democracy and their continued contribution to both stabilizing and enriching our democracy as well. Both of us, Mr. Jonas and I, appreciate the recognition that you're giving, but tonight, even without consulting him, I want to dedicate these awards, particularly in the current period, to the men and women who work at the National Treasury. And also the 14,000 very honest officials of the South African Revenue Service, notwithstanding the bosses they have at the moment. We have heard a lot this evening about state capture, repurposing the state, the patron of this particular process who occupies the presidency, the various brokers that have facilitated this process as well. And in that sense, we've all got the analysis as to what is the problem, We all have an understanding of how extensive the problem is. We understand that this problem isn't just a little pimple on one's skin. This is a cancer that is spreading every single day, both in the public sector and, I'm sorry to say, also in the private sector. Yeah, you can clap because that's true. Because the recent revelations around KPMG, McKinsey, Bell Pottinger, and others, and the banks and their role. I think last week there was an article which said that some of the Gupta money had gone through 20 different banks across the world so that they could find their way to the, inverted commas, right place, wherever that might be at this point in time, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or Hong Kong, or elsewhere, about places that you might know better and more than I do at this point. There's some laughter here, so there's some recognition of that. So we know what the problem is, ladies and gentlemen. The question today, having had a few months of challenging this environment, of challenging state capture, of challenging the way in which the leadership of this country, or some in the leadership of this country and in the ANC, are conducting themselves, the question is, how do we stop and how do we curtail the spread of this cancer? And it is in this context that we say to ourselves that we need to become, A, citizens who are able to connect the dots, as we've been saying. In other words, every single day there's something new that is being revealed. There are new emails that are on the internet. There's new information that is coming out. There's, interestingly, also weaker and weaker denials that are emerging as well. They become extremely defensive. So, for example, a recent experience in Parliament is that once you start asking a few penetrating questions of still relatively minor players in this process, you have a minister and a deputy minister who now want to send us lawyers' letters threatening that they will actually deal with, inverted commas, the evidence leader, who is a very courageous advocate and a public servant as well. So there's no doubt that the kind of public pressure that we've demonstrated over time is beginning to have some effect on those that find themselves in the spotlight. I think the question that remains is, how do we massify this process? How do we increase the scale of resistance? How do we send out the message even more loudly than we've been doing until now through various people in every sector of society, so that it becomes so loud as to be intolerable to the persons who are occupying these seats and abusing the seats of power in order to enrich themselves. In particular, I think for the community that is largely represented here tonight, we haven't heard a singular voice yet, a collective voice, which says to the Gupta family, you don't represent who we are. You don't reflect what our ethos and our principles are. In fact, the sooner you get out of South Africa, the better for all of us. So my 5 minutes are up, but let me conclude on the note once again of thanking the CBE on behalf of Mr. Jonas and myself, but to remind you that there's a lot more work to do. The guys who have enjoyed power and privilege and the opportunity that they created for themselves to steal public funds are not going to give up their positions easily. So we're going to require massive pressure and extraordinary activism, and indeed leadership of that activism as well, if we're going to actually stop them from continuing with their processes. And I hope that you will join the many organizations that are very strongly expressing their views, but also mobilizing people to, in very clear terms, express their opposition to what is going on, but more importantly, express our intention to continue to build a better South Africa for all South Africans. Thank you very much.
لا 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 ما تسوى الدنيا تضيق خلقك الحمد لله تافر وضح من حقك بس
We are going to let you know something about our next awardee, who is Sipo Pityan.
Well, thank you very much. I think that all has been said. I'd like to thank CBE for the honor. And indeed, I have no doubt in my mind that this is an award that I'm receiving on behalf of the many courageous South Africans who only a year ago thought it right to voice their own feelings about what was obviously and clearly an attack on honest civil servants serving our nation in government and pushing back the frontiers of state capture. Some of them were here and they addressed you. And indeed, I believe that the journey to push back those frontiers of state capture remain a very important project. It is a great burden to receive an award named after a great person in the name of Ahmed Kathrada. It's named thus in celebration and in memory of the service not only of Ahmed Kathrada, but those that with him took leadership and made it possible for us to imagine a country and a society capable of races living together in prosperity, free from discrimination and free from oppression of one by another. It is their aspirations that haunt many of us and make us feel possible to defy the might of those who may be in power today, and dare say to them that you will not betray their dreams, our dreams, on the altar of greed. So we are committed to continue, as PG has indicated, to fight the good fight to ensure that we go back to the course that we defined to ensure that our country is free and truly free. Our country won't be free until and unless the resources that are now going to the riches of the Guptas and those that serve them go back to the poor for whom they are intended. The marginalization of the poor is a betrayal of their aspirations by a government that was elected to serve their interests. It is time for those of us who believe in what is captured in the constitution of our country, the values in that constitution, to honor its aspiration for an equitable society. With those very few words, thank you very much.
Our next recipient, ladies and gentlemen, is a man who needs no introduction, Mr. Solly Mapaila.
No, thank you very much to the CBE for the award. Quite humbling. I don't have much words to say, except to say I want to dedicate this award to Comrade Imtiaz Kaji, the nephew of Comrade Ahmed Timol, and to the Timol family for the work they did to show us how to continue to seek for justice as they confronted the entire apartheid machinery that was hidden in the new democracy that refused to tell the truth on the story of one of our great cadres of the Communist Party, Comrade Ahmed Timol, who was brutally murdered by the police. So, Mohammed, the Timol family, this is for you. Thank you very much.
But maybe I should call on this man to provide that assistance. So a bit of punting here for Wayne Divenage.
Thank you very much to the CB, and really I do feel extremely humbled because I don't have the struggle credentials, the past that so many of these amazing people who've been here before me today have received. But I come from the business world where I think we've been for too long continuing a practice of business as usual and not taking a stand where it is required, because government often believes that if they just simply put in place legislation on matters that are badly researched and on matters that do not make sense, then these things will just happen. And we had done a lot of research before we tackled the decision on e-tolls, because not for the reasons of poking a stick in the government's eyes, not for the reasons to want to pick a fight with government, or the fact that e-tolls don't work, because they do work. They work in many parts of the world. They're very successful. The technology is great. But in the context of the environment where they were going to implement it here, it had every reason to fail, as it has done. Because you cannot have a user-paid scheme where less than half the users pay, even less than 80%. And the scheme never got to 40%, and today 1 in 5 pay. And we want to say to government that if you're going to participate in schemes, you need to engage with the people. You need to ensure that you listen and take advice from your critics, and not just shun them and have this arrogant attitude that it is going to be a business as usual with government getting its way. And so out of this has been born an organization that realizes it has a role to play, and also to challenge government, because besides the fact that government believes so often that it has the rights to implement what it wants to implement, it also has the rights to listen to the public. It also has a right to establish facts on all the schemes that they want to introduce with the public behind those schemes in order to make them work. Because if you don't have the will and the buy-in of the public, well, then you will have a failed government. And that's what we have right now today. But what we also have is frustration and depression setting into the nation, where we can see this absolute fear of things going wrong and this hopelessness. And we believe that civil society has a big role to play, not only to challenge government, but to challenge the other side of the corruption coin, which is business. And it frustrates us to see that these massive capital projects are taking place with huge amounts of money being thrown at government money, state money, and businesses playing on the other side, tendering for these big contracts at prices that double, 3 times the price that government would get it on the open market. And so we say to the KPMGs of the world, in the audit houses, we used to trust you. We needed you to play your role on the other side of that game to uncover the corruption that business is taking part in, and you failed us. And the other day I was speaking to a group of investors who were saying, but it's not going to be good for those people who work at KPMG. It's not going to be good to have one of the big audit houses fail. And one of the responses was, maybe another 100 audit houses will have to develop out of the failure of one big one, because those people will find jobs there, and they will learn from what's happened at KPMG, and they'll hopefully become the big corruption-fighting organizations of the future in this country. But what I want to just leave you with is the message that I think we believe that things are getting worse. But what we see at ARTA is that things are just getting more uncovered. And we need to fight harder, because this corruption machine, we are standing in the way of people that are earning millions and billions of rands. And as Praveen Gordon said, they're not going to go away easily, and we have to fight harder. And if we do, and if we don't give up, I'm sure that we together can beat this corruption game, can take it out, and can give birth to an amazing nation, once again, whose prosperity is far greater than what it should be. Thank you very much. I'd just like to say I take this award on behalf of all the team at ARTA and my wife, who stood behind me all this time. Thank you, Helen.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zach Jacob. Since that first meeting with him, I'm sure he's turned on so many other lights for the one that went wrong on him that night.
So I will, as usual, start a little irreverently by telling you a joke. Nobody has said a joke yet. So I thought maybe we should do that. Mahatma Gandhi went to visit the Queen wearing a dhoti, and Her Majesty said to him, "Mr. Gandhi, aren't you cold?" And the Mahatma said, "Your Majesty has more than enough clothes for both of us." So I want to say to all your Majesties, you have more than enough ties for the likes of us. Okay. Let me say thank you very, very much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm both humbled and proud and honored. It has been a wonderful time, and I feel grateful for being recognized in this way. It always encourages one and inspires one to do more, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm grateful to my family, to the hundreds and thousands of people who have actually contributed to my life. There are people here who used to read to me at university. There are people here who helped me with my judicial duties. There are people here who helped me with my political work and so on and so on. So I am not here just for myself. I have been helped by thousands and thousands of people to bring me where I am, and therefore all I am doing is repaying somehow the debt I owe to the hundreds and hundreds of people who are responsible for where I am today. The only message I want to give is, let's get back to the Constitution, please. We hardly hear about the Constitution these days. We hardly hear about the Bill of Rights these days. And really, that should become our point of reference once again. Our Constitution says that our society is equal, yet it is not. Our Constitution says that there should be equality at every level. There's none. There is a disconnect between our Constitution and everything else that stands in our country. And I want to say that the law is not the only way in which to overcome that problem, because the law goes part of the way. What we need is for all of us to read the Bill of Rights, humbly embrace its values, practice those values in a real way, ensure that other people practice those values, values of equality, dignity, respect, and make sure that we persuade more and more people to practice those values, so that if one can say in 10 years' time that 30 or 20 or 30% of more people in our country truly internalize and embrace those values instead of talking about them, we would have gone a long way. So I want to say that we need, in addition to legal people working on the Constitution, a social revolution in which we should all participate, and I wish all of us good luck in the process. Thank you very much.
لا 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 ما تسوى الدنيا تضيق خلقك الحمد لله تافل وضح من حقك بس
That is not just a jet or a plane, it is a very special plane. And we're going to hear about it in a moment. The man who was deeply involved in its creation is Dr. Riza Mia. And as he comes up on the stage, we would like to also to join us here, Ghulam Balam and Farzana Varacha from the CBE. Dr. Riza Mia, receiving his award. And no, the young lady on there is not the Priyanka Chopra in disguise that I showed you earlier. She is Farzana from the CBE.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Fakir, and to the Congress of Business and Economics. It was not too long ago that I was pleasantly surprised with an award for business recognition for entrepreneurship for my work on the Pegasus VBJ project and for my aesthetic medical practice. Still absorbing this achievement, the realization of the reality of the Pegasus VBJ is quickly falling into place. I'm grateful to have the opportunity tonight to be surrounded by such credible business leaders, potential investors, as well as to rub shoulders with our peers. I'm really happy and excited and honored to receive this innovation award. I believe that innovation is the answer to the challenges we face as a country and as a planet. Pegasus is an innovation company. We worked on the Pegasus Roadjet, which is a modified sprinter van, and now on the Pegasus Vertical Business Jet. We also work to provide aviation finance and leasing through a UK aviation finance company. The airplane is very exciting for me. It is 70% cheaper to operate than a helicopter, with 3 times the range and speed, but still keeping with the helicopter convenience of vertical takeoff and landing. It can land on a helipad and on wooden grass and decks. I started the company to produce the airplane. I just want to give a message to other inventors and innovators out there. Of course, a project like this at first is met with a mix of doubt, disbelief, and sometimes laughter. However, I found encouragement and support here and there and with my family to keep moving forward. And of course, as innovators, I'd like to encourage you all to keep on moving forward. Because if you worry about failure and ridicule, these projects will never see the light of day. We must trust our gut feelings, follow our hearts, go with the flow, because that's the divine guidance inside us, while at the same time following scientific business principles. This clock is very distracting. In encouraging people to keep innovating, I must emphasize that innovation happens inside us as well. We must never accept limiting definitions that other people impose upon us. Despite the challenges we face as a country, we must remain optimistic and look to the future. With Pegasus, I hope to create between 7,000 and 11,000 jobs and bring in a large amount of foreign income because most of the business jet market is international. The future of the company is to complete the business jet development, certify the airplane, and use the profits of the airplane to produce new and other exciting innovations and airplanes. I often get asked, how do I get involved? This is such an exciting idea. And so what I've done is I've registered a public unlisted company, almost as a source of crowdfunding, to allow us to develop the program faster. We're not allowed to share this yet with the public, but if you keep an eye on our page, Pegasus_UA on Instagram, or Pegasus Universal Aerospace on Facebook, we'll be able to keep you posted. However, private placements are still possible. So if anyone does find this idea interesting, I'm sitting at table 11. You can find me there. I know I'm over time. I'll just be 10 more seconds. I find the stories that I've heard tonight very inspirational. We're grateful to the people who have fought for our country and our freedom and our rights, and I think we owe it to them to take the baton from them, not to rest on our laurels and become complacent. We must take our democratic right and duties seriously and not take it for granted. It's time for us to look deep inside and ask ourselves when we'll decide that enough is enough and hold our politicians accountable for their actions if they do not do what is best for the people and the country. This is our country, and we need to act like it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So let's have Rashid do a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Fakir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar. Assalamu alaikum. Sawabona. Goeienaand. Let us agree. This is a unique event. We've got veterans, we've got young scientists, we've got just about everybody important in our lives. Let us stand up and give them all a standing ovation. I think they deserve it. Please, let us give it to them. They really deserve it. Well done, people. We are proud of you, truly South African. To each and every one of you. Thank you, people. Honorable MC, Mr. Fakir Hassan, respected CBE Chairperson J. Pema, members of the organizing committee and members of the board, our most valued and invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed my privilege to have been asked to extend a vote of thanks to all of those who have made it possible to convene this historic third edition of Tribute to Our Heroes by the CBE. I, on behalf of the CBE and the entire organizing committee, including myself, extend a hearty vote of thanks to all awardees and the keynote speaker for gracing us with your presence and to share with us your success and your trials and tribulations so that the rest of South Africa can witness it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like the following people to stand up, please. Yusuf Musaji and Yasmin Lahe, please stand up. These people have been behind the scenes over there. They have been the driving force behind it. Thank you very much to both of you. God bless you. I wish to thank the board and organizing committee for their efforts into developing the tribute to our heroes as an important calendar event. And I can safely say it has now become a branded event for this community. The vision that this board has, their interest, dedication, and hard work has once again culminated in another success story. Also want to say a big thank you to Bonang, who left earlier, When I told him what the price of that gift was, he asked me for a reduction in invoice so he doesn't have to declare it. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheel started rolling months ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated people who know their job and are results-oriented, and for their enormous cooperation, I'd like to thank the following people. MC Fakir Hassan, Imran from Palm Continental and his team, Fuad Valley and his security team, they really kept guard on us tonight. To all our CBE ambassadors, thank you very much, young men and women, for a lovely job we did. Our graphic designer, Desmond and Pofu, who Honorable MC kept awake at 2 in the morning sometimes. Our media partner, ITV, Farah, thank you so much. Our saxophonist, Gordon, where are you? Thank you so much for the lovely entertainment. To MCA for the gifts. To Frame Talk, also in his Oriental Art Gallery, who gave us or donated the frame for the Timol family over the counter. It's almost like an hour's notice. Once again, I also want to thank Amita Anand, who did the voiceover, and Kavish Rambaran. Also to Sushil and his team for the sound and the vision. Excellent work. Thank you so much. And finally, our photographer, Abdul Haq, Jazakumullah, Shukran Jazilan. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good night. God bless. And may you have a lovely festive season and holidays coming ahead of you. Good night.
لا 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 ما تسوى الدنيا تضيق خلقك الحمد لله ما حد بياخذ منك رزقك هدي وارتاح تابر واطمح من حقك بس بلاش العين لا 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 ما تسوى الدنيا تضيق خلقك الحمد لله ما حد بياخذ منك رزقك هدي وارتاح تابر